13 days from now, the US Open starts. And right now, both Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz are hurt, undertrained, and running out of time to fix it. Sinner hasn't played a match since Wimbledon. Alcaraz hasn't played one since April. That's the world number one and the defending champion, the two men every single fan expects to meet in the final, walking into the biggest hardcourt event of the year running on rehab, not match rhythm. And here's the part almost nobody's talking about yet. One of them just made a decision this week that could either save his tournament or blow it up completely. I'll get to exactly what that decision is and why it matters more than either of their injuries on their own. So is this the crack in the armor that finally opens the door for the rest of the field? Or are we about to watch two of the toughest competitors in the sport grit their way through pain to defend their spots at the top? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where each of them stands as of today, what each camp is actually doing about it, and who benefits most if one of them doesn't make it deep into this tournament. Let's get into it. Let's start with the world number one. Back on August 9th, Jannik Sinner announced he was pulling out of the Cincinnati Open. In his statement, he said that after consulting with his doctors and team, his right knee had been bothering him, and despite working hard with his medical staff, he simply wasn't ready to compete. Here's the part that should worry every Sinner fan, though. This isn't a guy who picked up a knock mid-match and is playing through it. Sinner hadn't played a single competitive match since winning Wimbledon on July 12th. The knee issue flared up during training, away from the court lights, away from live competition, which makes it a lot harder to predict how it holds up once he's forced to move explosively again. What's he actually done about it? This is where it gets interesting. Reports out of Italy say Sinner has been undergoing shockwave therapy, a non-invasive treatment, on the inflamed area at J Medical in Turin, one of his regular clinical facilities. He stayed there through mid-August to finish the treatment. Then came a short break in Monte Carlo, where he turned 25 on August 16th with his family. New York is next. The plan has him arriving around August 18th, leaving roughly a dozen days of on-court training before the tournament begins. Now, quick gut check on how good his season has been, because this matters for how much benefit of the doubt he deserves. 6 titles in 2026. Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, Madrid, Rome, and Wimbledon. A 44-3 win-loss record, and he's about to mark his 85th consecutive week at world number one. This is a man in career-best form, which is exactly why this knee scare feels like it came out of nowhere. The countdown is officially on, roughly 2 weeks between his last competitive match and the US Open. For most players, that gap is a red flag. For Sinner, maybe less of one, and I'll get to exactly why in a few minutes. Section close. Cliffhanger. But if Sinner's situation sounds manageable, wait until you hear where Alcaraz actually stands right now. Rewind to April, the Barcelona Open. Alcaraz is in his opening round match against Otto Virtanen and suffers a right wrist injury. He actually wins the match, but the injury forces him out of the rest of the tournament. Since then, he's basically been a ghost on tour, missing the French Open, missing Wimbledon, missing both Masters 1000 hardcourt events in North America. By the time the US Open begins, Alcaraz will be looking at roughly 4.5 months without a single competitive match. 4.5 months. Let that sit for a second. This is the defending US Open champion, the guy who beat Sinner in an absolute classic final last September, walking into the tournament having played essentially zero competitive tennis since the spring. People forget something important, too. He wasn't struggling before the injury hit. Alcaraz sits at 22-3 for the season. He beat Novak Djokovic to win the Australian Open and complete the career Grand Slam as the youngest man ever to do it, then followed that up with the Qatar Open title, and even reached the Monte Carlo final before losing to, who else? Sinner. This wasn't a guy in a slump. This was a guy playing some of the best tennis of his life, right up until his wrist gave out. So what's actually wrong with it? Reports say it's tenosynovitis, inflammation in the protective sheath surrounding the wrist tendons. Translation: this isn't the kind of injury that heals on a fixed timeline. It's aggravated by repetitive motion, and there's arguably no shot in tennis more repetitive or more wrist-dependent than the forehand, which happens to be the signature weapon that makes Alcaraz, well, Alcaraz. Because of all that lost time, his ranking has taken a real hit too. He's now down to world number 3, overtaken while sitting out. And it's serious enough that some voices in the sport are questioning whether he should even be rushing back at all. Andy Murray has publicly warned Alcaraz about what to expect on his return, and at least one former top four player has gone as far as suggesting Alcaraz should skip the US Open entirely rather than risk the injury long term. Section close, cliffhanger. Is Alcaraz walking straight into a disaster then, or skipping New York altogether? Not so fast. His team has a plan, and it's a gamble. Alcaraz's camp isn't just sitting back hoping for the best. Reports out of Spain suggest they're seriously considering a wild card into the Winston-Salem Open, an ATP 250 event running August 23rd to 29th, the very last tournament before the US Open main draw begins. As of today, though, Alcaraz's name is not yet on the Winston-Salem entry list. The tournament has 4 wildcards still available, and organizers would clearly love to have him, but nothing is confirmed. Right now, the highest-ranked player committed to that field is world number 20 Luciano Darderi, alongside the defending champion Marton Fucsovics. The plan being floated isn't to grind through a title run there. The idea is more of a soft landing. Play a handful of matches, potentially withdraw after the quarterfinals or semifinals, purely to bank match practice before New York. It's a calculated risk either way. Play too much, and you risk re-aggravating a wrist that's already fragile. Play too little, or skip it entirely, and you show up to a Grand Slam completely cold against players who've been battling in best-of-3 matches for weeks. Pattern interrupt, direct address. Quick question for you. If you were Alcaraz's coach, would you gamble on Winston-Salem, or shut him down completely and protect the wrist for the long term? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see the split. For Sinner, the calculus is different. Analysts argue rust matters less for him than almost anyone else in the field. A couple of weeks off with structured training in New York isn't remotely the same as an entire spring and summer on the sidelines, and his game leans more on raw power and clean ball striking than on the rhythm and timing Alcaraz depends on. But that's all assuming one thing. The knee holds up once real matches start. Before we get into how this actually changes the seedings, and who's quietly positioned to steal the title while these two are hurting, hit subscribe now, because I'm tracking both of their statuses all the way through the draw release, and you don't want to miss that update. On paper, this is how the picture shakes out right now. With Alcaraz already down at world number 3 behind Zverev, the draw itself becomes a threat. A lower seed means he could run into a top rival far earlier than usual, quarterfinals instead of semifinals or final. For a guy still trying to find his match fitness, an early brutal draw is the last thing he needs. Meanwhile, if Sinner's knee holds, he remains the runaway favorite. 6 titles this year, a 44-3 record, 85 straight weeks at number 1. Consider this stat too. Heading into this tournament, Sinner and Alcaraz have not played each other on a hard court all year, and Alcaraz's only meeting with Sinner in 2026 was that Monte Carlo final loss on clay. Which means if these two collide in New York, it's their first hard-court meeting of the entire season, and potentially a rematch of last year's unforgettable final, where Alcaraz came back to beat Sinner in 4 sets to capture his second US Open title. So who else could capitalize? Alexander Zverev is the name analysts keep circling back to. He's now above Alcaraz in the rankings and holds a major title. But even his backers admit hesitation. He still hasn't solved Sinner on the Grand Slam stage. Beyond Zverev, names like Novak Djokovic, Ben Shelton, and rising talents Joao Fonseca and Rafael Jodar are all being floated as potential beneficiaries if either Sinner or Alcaraz falters early. Section close, cliffhanger. These two aren't carrying this alone either. Wait until you see how deep the injury list actually runs. Alcaraz and Sinner aren't the only stars walking into the US Open banged up. British star Jack Draper has been fighting his body all year, bone bruising in his serving arm on top of a knee issue that ended his clay court season early. Even after returning at the Canadian Open, he still looked hampered by the arm during a tough 3-set loss, and was seen in tears during a changeover without even calling for a physio, choosing to play through it. Draper himself called it an incredibly complex injury to manage, given how much stress his 130-mile-an-hour serve puts on that same arm. The women's draw isn't spared either. The Cincinnati Open's absentee list swelled to 17 players this year, with names like Naomi Osaka among the withdrawals. Put it all together, and this is shaping up to be one of the most injury-riddled runs into a Grand Slam tennis has seen in years. And it's throwing the entire title picture wide open. And here's the twist. None of this is slowing down the hype or the price tag. Even with all this uncertainty, ticket demand has barely blinked. Get-in prices climbed 26% compared to last year, and with the tournament now under 2 weeks away, fans are still betting big that Sinner and Alcaraz show up and deliver. If either of them pulls out entirely, expect those prices to drop fast. To be clear, as of today, neither Sinner nor Alcaraz has withdrawn from the US Open itself. Both remain on the official entry list, and Sinner in particular is reported to be firmly on track, expected to lead the draw at Flushing Meadows. But the uncertainty is real, and it's coming from two completely different places. Sinner managing fresh knee treatment into a tournament he's expected to dominate, and Alcaraz trying to defend a Grand Slam title after 4.5 months of essentially no tennis at all. So remember that decision I mentioned at the very start, the one that could either save Alcaraz's tournament or blow it up? That's the Winston-Salem wild card. Play it, and he risks the wrist again just days before a slam. Skip it, and he walks into New York having played one competitive match in 4.5 months. There's no safe option here, just two different flavors of risk, and his team has to pick one within the next few days. Can Sinner's knee hold up under the grind of best-of-5 tennis after just 12 days of training? Can Alcaraz find his rhythm fast enough to defend his crown, with or without Winston-Salem? Or does this injury chaos finally crack the door open for someone like Zverev, Djokovic, or a total dark horse to steal the spotlight? Drop your prediction below. Who walks away with the US Open title this year, and does either Sinner or Alcaraz even make the final? If this breakdown helped you understand what's actually going on, smash the like button, subscribe for the draw release update, and I'll see you in the next one.